what I've seen from my perspective is several companies have been confronted with direct feedback from the agency telling them what the agency think their essential performance requirements are, and therefore that they need to test them. That's come very late in the process, and because you don't necessarily have the controls in place, you end up putting it on the release spec. And I think this initiative takes the thinking back to an earlier stage in development, goes back to what I was saying before about understanding your system, driving out the essential performance attributes or requirements early enough to put the controls in place at the right place in the supply chain, and then you've got both a solid and efficient control strategy, and you're armed with justification to be able to go and discuss with the agency. Whereas I think a lot of companies were in a position when asked, they couldn't explain the science or the basis for why they were testing A or B, so the agency just said, okay, do glide force, injection time, blah, 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 on release. And then you're testing every product for the rest of the time. And I know some companies are throwing batches away because they can't meet those acceptance criteria. So I think it's the right way round to do it. Some companies are going to have to go backwards a little bit on some products to try and implement a new control strategy that's maybe different to the one they had.
And I guess as part of that discussion, I think it's important to note that this concept was an option for a drug product, for the medicinal product, before QBD guidance was published. So it's applying quite a well-established concept for a medicinal product in a much newer environment. However, having said that, given that earlier precedent, as long as you're controlling it, it shouldn't matter where you're testing it as far as release goes, but we can't ignore import and long-term stability. So we have to find the right balance. You might be able to argue upstream control under some circumstances, but you may also need to have a test available for those occasions where you do need to perform the same test on the finished product. So we describe all of that in the paper and try to give people some different options to think about.
I'd actually challenge that a little bit. I think design control, if done properly, gives you essential performance requirements, and that is precursing QBD by decades. So I think, from a device perspective, if it's done properly, you have a control strategy that comes out at the end anyway. But I think it's same thing. The question on Japan, I thought was an interesting one. Can we switch topic? So I think if I understood correctly, you have a CE mark device. You want to go to Japan. Japan are saying we don't care about the CE mark.
And they want to change the IFU.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I don't see that as any different to having a label in a different language and going to a new region. You need to change the label. So my perspective would be you need to remove the CE mark because it's not applicable in that region and it's potentially misleading. But the best thing to do surely is go talk to them.
Yeah, we talked to them. They insist on having their own IFU.
Yeah.
Different than the CE IFU.
Yeah. And I think that's our experience as well in Japan, is that you do need to they have a very specific way of doing IFUs. A lot of times they're like pictures, like live pictures, rather than the sort of conventional drawings that you have in other markets. So I don't think you're going to get around that one, unfortunately.
I guess just one comment on that. I mean, if you've got a global presentation that's been, verified and validated, and then a local country that's coming up with a different IFU, I suppose it does raise a question, will that IFU be still valid for your presentation which you've validated? And I would suggest that then they would need to maybe take a responsibility for ensuring that, if they're going to deviate from the global offering.
But you don't validate for a global offering, you validate for your region's requirements. If you're addressing human factors summative requirements under 62366, that's Europe and US only.
Yeah, the reason why I'm saying that is, we've had several instances where we've, prepared a global presentation according to all of our, internal processes, and then another country has said, well, we need to change this picture or do that, and then just the point is, well, we just need to make sure that those changes are equally valid and have been followed up, because 9 times out of 10, the CMO, the CPO or the country they're dealing with won't have a device group, so they won't know the intricacies of and the significance of changing, for example, the IFU.
In any case, in Japan, you can have a specific IFU because, for example, they may not. Our experience has been that they don't put in the IFUs time out of refrigeration, for example, where you have your patients that can keep their I don't know device in the fridge and then use it for a number of days when stored out of refrigeration. So that's a specific also here. So that's at the end of the day, I'm not surprised with the local requirements.
I want to add a small thing about trend reporting. So I've addressed trend reporting in the presentation under the MDR, EU, and the current MEDEF. For the US, there is no similar requirement under the Part 803, which is medical device reporting.